My own son signed the papers to lock me away. But I remembered who I was before they erased me. There's a particular kind of silence that only follows betrayal. It doesn't scream or crash, it hums. Low and steady. Like the kind of quiet you hear in a hospital hallway after bad news has been delivered. That's the silence I sat in when my daughter-in-law ripped the dessert plate from under my fork and smiled. "You've had enough, Grandma," she said, her voice sticky sweet, sharp as a paper cut. Everyone at the table froze. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in late September, technically fall, but the sun was still flexing like it had something to prove. Bree had decided to throw a brunch to celebrate 5 years of marriage to my son, Dan. She called it a refined, intimate gathering, which translated to overpriced pastries, lemon-infused water, and a centerpiece of flowers so sterile they looked like they'd been grown in a lab. And it was hosted right here, in my house. Well, legally, it was still partially mine. Emotionally? That line had been crossed a long time ago. I sat at the end of the reclaimed wood table that I'd chosen myself, back when I could still recognize every color in this room. Back when it was warm, textured, lived in. Now it was all brushed chrome and off-white. Designer neutral. Like Bree had scrubbed the soul out of it. I'd made the mistake of reaching for a second slice of pear tart, one of the few items I actually liked on the table. That's when Bree struck. Dan didn't say a word. Just kept his eyes on his mimosa like it might explain why he married her in the first place. The others, neighbors, co-workers, Bree's Pilates friends, shifted in their chairs. Polite discomfort swelled in the room like humidity. Someone coughed. Someone else sipped too loudly. Even the baby stopped fussing. I folded my napkin. Slowly. Carefully. I made sure not to look up. If I did, they'd see it, all of it. The rage, the shame, the heartbreak. So instead, I stood. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely more than a breath. No one stopped me. I walked down the hall I had once painted myself, 2 coats of soft linen with a sponge finish I'd seen on HGTV in 2004. The hallway still smelled faintly of lavender, though Bree had tried to override it with her synthetic eucalyptus candles. I didn't go to my suite. I went to the office, the one they never used anymore. The room still had dust on the bookshelves and a slight sag in the ceiling that Bree kept saying needed a contractor's eye, though she never called one. Probably because that room wasn't about her. It was mine. I opened the old filing cabinet. Second drawer down. Beneath the folder marked Collins Family Estate. I pulled out the document. Thick paper. Notarized. Signed. Sealed. Revocable life estate agreement. My name, Margaret Eloise Collins. His name, Harold James Collins. Dated 7 years ago. 7 years. That's how long it had been since I'd given Dan and Bree this house as a wedding gift. But it wasn't a full surrender. Harold had made sure of that before he passed. God bless that stubborn, beautiful man, he insisted we retain the legal right to live here until I died or decided otherwise. He even had our family lawyer, Trish Monroe, draft the specific clause, grantor retains full possession, decision-making rights, and revocation power throughout her lifetime. They'd never read the fine print. Or they didn't think I had the spine to use it. I traced my finger over the words like they might burn through the paper and into my skin. Somewhere deep inside, something clicked. Like a switch I hadn't realized was still connected. They thought I was fading. What they didn't realize was, I had built this house out of grief. After Harold died, I didn't just need a roof. I needed purpose. Every floorboard I chose, every drawer pull, every damn brick, I built with my own hands. It was therapy. It was salvation. It was mine. And now? I was nothing more than background noise. They'd stop saying our home the second the ink dried. Now it was their kitchen. Their upgrades. Their guest list. I was just the old woman who occasionally watered the plants and tried not to burn the toast. 3 weeks ago, I overheard Bree on the phone, her voice drifting through the cracked bathroom door as I walked past with a laundry basket. "She's not going to be here much longer," she said. "I already found a memory care place just outside Tacoma. Super clean, all private rooms. Dan's still soft on her, but I'll wear him down." My hands went numb. I sat on the closed toilet seat in the dark and clutched the warm laundry like a life vest. Memory care? I'm forgetful sometimes, sure. I call Lily by my sister's name now and then. But I still do Sudoku faster than Dan can open his banking app. And I remember everything that matters. I remember Bree donating my favorite reading chair without asking. I remember Dan letting her paint over the mural I hand-painted in the hallway. I remember how no one asked when they changed my Medicare login info. I remember being erased, one habit, one memory, one floral quilt at a time. But now, I held the key. In writing. In legalese. In cold, precise typeface. They tried to push me into a corner of the home I'd built, the life I'd restarted. But I wasn't a fragile antique to be dusted and ignored. I was fireproof. That night, I sat at my desk with a legal pad and a fountain pen I hadn't used since Harold's funeral. I started listing every incident. I titled the page, "Pattern of Diminishment." Every slight, every overreach, every helpful suggestion that chipped away at who I was. Changed prescription provider without consent. Redirected mail from Medicare. Replaced my garden beds with gravel without discussion. Made condescending comments in front of guests. Whispered assisted living like it was a solution, not a betrayal. I didn't know what I'd do with the list yet. But writing it down made me feel present. Documented. Real. At 2:17 a.m., I tiptoed into the kitchen for a glass of water. Bree had left her iPad open on the island. On it was a search history tab. Power of Attorney Forms Washington State Printable. I closed it gently. Walked back to my suite. And started to plan. As I lay down that night, a thought echoed in my mind like a mantra: they think I'm done. But they've only sharpened me. Grief had shaped me once before. Maybe it was time to let fury finish the job. They say paranoia is just intuition that hasn't been validated yet. That week, I stopped calling it paranoia and started calling it math, because everything added up. After the brunch disaster, I didn't retreat. I sharpened. I began watching my life like I wasn't in it. I started calculating. Every time Bree smiled too wide. Every time Dan forgot to tell me about a house showing or a new lock code. Every time my laundry came back folded wrong, like someone else had touched it. Those weren't accidents. They were signs. A trail of breadcrumbs leading to the same conclusion. They were trying to erase me, carefully, politely, but fully. I played dumb. A role they expected me to play, apparently. I forgot the grocery list. Called the Wi-Fi the dial-up. Laughed too loudly at jokes I didn't hear. Bree beamed every time, like she'd won something. But the real test came Tuesday. I woke up to find a glass of orange juice waiting on my nightstand. I never drink orange juice. Too acidic. Harold used to say it gave me a grumpier growl. I picked it up, smelled it, then set it down. Didn't drink a drop. 2 hours later, I was nauseous. The world tilted slightly, like my brain had slipped in its socket. I sat down in the hallway, pressed my back to the wall, and waited for the world to stop spinning. Bree found me 10 minutes later. "Oh my God, Maggie," she gasped. "Are you confused again?" She said again like this was routine. I opened my mouth, but my throat was tight. I couldn't form a sentence that didn't sound guilty. Dan rushed in from the garage, half-dressed, holding his phone. "I'm calling the doctor," he said. "You're not well." I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "Check the juice." Bree's expression flickered, just for a second, then reset to concern. "Maybe she mixed up her pills," she told Dan. Or forgot to eat again. She was setting the stage. Line by line. They drove me to the ER. Not the urgent care. The full hospital. Bree kept telling the nurse I'd been acting off for weeks, dropping hints about dementia in the family, about how I'd once called her the maid. That never happened. She was spinning the scene like she was directing a play. While they waited for labs, I asked for water. Bree brought it. Dan just stared at the floor. I know what this is, I told him softly. He didn't reply. When the labs came back, everything was normal. But Bree didn't skip a beat. Maybe a neurologist, she said. Just in case. That's when I knew, I wasn't imagining any of it. The next morning, I didn't say a word. I made breakfast like usual, humming a church hymn my mother taught me, scrambled eggs and toast. I served them both. Smiled. Even wore pearls. Then I went upstairs, pulled out the flash drive from the baby monitor archives, and labeled the new folder Manipulation, Medical. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I visited Dr. Tessa Bloom and requested a full psychological and cognitive workup, unprompted, voluntary. She looked surprised. You seem perfectly sharp, she said. Put it on paper, I told her. I aced every test. Naming presidents backward. Recall games. Even clock drawing. When she handed me the signed report, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from fury contained too long. I made 5 copies this time. I slipped one into the old sewing kit Bree had stashed in the garage. Another into the pages of my wedding Bible. One went straight to Trish Monroe. And one I mailed. To myself. Certified mail. Unopened, postmarked proof. Then I did something I swore I never would. I logged into Dan's iCloud account. Harold taught me to keep all the passwords in a locked drawer. Dan never changed his. I knew his high school mascot, his favorite NFL team, and the year Bree forced him to go vegan for 6 weeks. It took me less than a minute to get in. And there, in his email, was the gut punch. Subject, property appraisal, 624 Beechwood. He had contacted a realtor. Asked for comps in the area. Even scheduled a preliminary walkthrough for after mom transitions to long-term care. Transitions. As if I were a phase. Or a burden being offloaded. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. It wasn't just Bree anymore. He was complicit. I printed every email. Highlighted every line. Labeled the folder Joint Betrayal. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the lights off, listening to the house breathe. Floorboards creaked like they were sighing. Somewhere in the pipes, water hummed. But I didn't cry. Not a single tear. The next morning, I pulled Bree aside. I'd like to plant something in the backyard, I said sweetly. A winter bloom. Something for Harold. She gave me a strained smile. Of course, Maggie. That's sweet. Later that day, I dug a hole near the rosebush. Bree watched from the window, arms crossed. She thought I was softening. Folding. But beneath the soil, I placed a waterproof box. Inside, the flash drive, the medical records, and a note that read. If I disappear, this is why. Then I covered it with dirt and planted a white camellia on top. Symbol of remembrance. Bree wouldn't know that. But I did. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Petition for guardianship. Filed by Bree. Supported by Dan. They used words like cognitive decline, paranoia, and safety. Trish Monroe reviewed it and frowned. They're pushing for an emergency hearing. They want me gone before Thanksgiving, I said flatly. Yes, she said. And we're going to stop them. That night, I called Lily. My granddaughter. College senior. Journalism major. Sharp as a blade and loyal to a fault. I need your help, I said. I'm in, she replied. No questions. The plan was forming. Not revenge. Not even justice. It was reclamation. This was still my house. And no one, was going to rewrite the story of my life while I was still living it. The house had never felt smaller. Every hallway echoed like a trap. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a whisper behind my back. Bree had stopped pretending. The gloves were off. And Dan? He was still playing neutral, like he was caught in a tug-of-war and didn't realize he'd dropped the rope weeks ago. But I was done being polite. Done being quiet. This war they started? I was about to finish it. That morning, I told Bree I was going for a walk. Clear my head, I said. She barely looked up from her phone. Don't wander too far, she said, like I was a golden retriever with a limp. I didn't walk. I drove. To the courthouse. Trish had helped me file the response, but now I needed to request a restraining order, an emergency one. Most people think restraining orders are for violent threats, but I had evidence of coercion, undue influence, and medical gaslighting. Turns out, elder abuse isn't always bruises. Sometimes, it's a smile with teeth. The clerk handed me the papers to fill out. I checked every box. Then I went to the local news station. I walked right into the front desk of KSE Channel 7, held up my folder and said, I have a story for you. And I have the receipts. The receptionist blinked. Are you, a reporter? No, I said. I'm the headline. By some miracle, or maybe fate, the producer of their Sunday Real People, Real Stories segment overheard us and came out to talk to me. Her name was Chloe Ramirez. Young, sharp, with the kind of look that said she's seen worse but didn't expect it in a pearl necklace and loafers. We talked for over an hour. I laid it all out, the brunch, the baby monitor footage, the hospital visit, the guardianship petition, the property appraisal. Chloe didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she looked stunned. This is unbelievable, she whispered. No, I said. It's America. And it's happening every day. She nodded slowly. Let me verify a few things. But, we want to cover this. Soon. As I drove home, my heart pounded like a drum. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Beautiful, righteous rage. But I didn't realize the storm waiting for me back at the house. When I walked in, Bree was holding my phone. The real one. The one I'd left charging on the counter. Her expression was pure venom. Who's Chloe Ramirez? She asked. I didn't flinch. A friend. She scoffed. A reporter friend? Dan walked in from the kitchen, holding my laptop. Why is your internet history full of legal forms and journalist contacts? They'd gone through my things. That's when I saw it, the baby monitor. The receiver. Gone from the guest room. You searched my room, I said slowly. We were worried about you, Bree said. Clearly, something's wrong. You're right, I snapped. Something is wrong. But it's not me. And just like that, it escalated. Dan stepped forward. You need help, Mom. No, I said. You need a conscience. Lily came barreling down the stairs. She'd heard everything. She walked straight past Dan, grabbed the mic from under my sweater, and held it up like a grenade. You just gave us the last piece, she said. Thanks. Bree lunged toward her. Delete that. Lily didn't move. Touch me and I'll file assault. You're on thin ice already. Dan looked like he'd been punched. What is going on? I turned to him, calm and cold. You let her weaponize love. You stood by while she dismantled your mother. And now, you want to act confused? He didn't speak. For once, Dan had no excuses left. That night, Lily and I packed our things and left. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't slam the door. We just vanished. Like they wanted. Only this time it was on my terms. We moved into a short-term rental across town. Tiny, dusty, but quiet. And mine. The next morning, Chloe called. I've got clearance. Your story airs Sunday. I almost dropped the phone. You ready for this? She asked. No, I said, but I'm not hiding anymore. Lily hugged me. This is your moment. We spent the next 2 days prepping. Chloe came by for an on-camera interview. I told my story again, this time with makeup, lighting, and courage. I didn't cry, but I came close. I just want my name back, I said into the lens. My dignity. My peace. Then, just as Chloe was packing up, she said, you might want to see this. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a TikTok clip, Gaslight Grandma, Part 1. Uploaded anonymously. Captioned, she's not crazy. She's their obstacle. It had already hit 300,000 views. I blinked. That's us. Lily nodded. I uploaded it last night. My jaw dropped. Lily. It's the truth, she said. And people need to see it. The comments were a mix of heartbreak and fury. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. That girl is a hero. Protect Grandma at all costs. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel, hope. But the biggest surprise came Friday morning. Dan showed up. Unannounced. Unshaven. Eyes rimmed with red. I didn't invite him in. We stood at the door. I saw the video, he said quietly. And? He looked down. I didn't know it was this bad. You didn't want to know. He nodded. I messed up. No, Dan. You gave me up. There's a difference. He started to speak, but I stopped him. I don't need your apology. I need you to show up in court. And tell the truth. He hesitated. If you ever loved me, ever, you'll do it. He blinked. Swallowed hard. Then nodded. I'll be there. He turned and walked away. I watched him go, heart twisting, unsure if I believed him, but certain that I no longer needed to. Because I had something stronger now. The truth. And an army of strangers who suddenly knew my name. By the time Sunday rolled around, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Could barely breathe. My face was everywhere, on Facebook, on TikTok, in Instagram Reels. Even the local news teaser had my voice, crackling but clear, saying, I just want my name back. I hadn't expected it to spread like wildfire, but something about my story cracked open something in people. Maybe it was because I wasn't rich. Or famous. Or glamorous. I was just someone's mom. Someone's grandma. A woman who'd paid her taxes, voted in every election, made tuna salad every Sunday, and was now fighting like hell not to disappear. The online support was overwhelming. Messages poured in. Women from Ohio, Texas, even as far as Maine sent notes like, this happened to my mother too, or thank you for speaking up. You're not alone. But none of it changed what was coming. Monday was the hearing. The emergency guardianship petition. Bree's last shot to lock me away legally. To make it official, my erasure. We arrived early. Trish, Lily, and me. Dan hadn't confirmed if he'd show. Part of me hoped he wouldn't. Part of me prayed he did. The courtroom was colder than I expected. A few pew-style benches, dusty sunlight slanting through tall windows, and a judge who looked like he could have been in high school with me. His nameplate read Judge E. Monroe. I wondered if he had grandkids. I hoped so. Bree walked in like she owned the place. Pencil skirt, heels clicking, folder under her arm. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Dan trailed behind her like a shadow, silent, eyes down. My hands were shaking, but I kept my spine straight. Trish leaned in. He's here. That's a good sign. I wasn't so sure. The judge called the case, and Bree rose first. She spoke in that fake soft voice she used when fundraising at church luncheons. Your Honor, this is not about resentment or drama. It's about safety. Maggie has shown signs of cognitive decline. She's confused reality. She believes we're conspiring against her. We simply want to ensure she receives proper care. She sat down with a satisfied little nod. The judge turned to Trish. Ms. Monroe? Trish stood. Calm. Steady. Her presence filled the room. With all due respect, Your Honor, what Ms. Collins is describing isn't cognitive decline. It's clarity. My client has documentation from a licensed neurologist attesting to her mental sharpness. We've also submitted evidence of manipulation, gaslighting, and undue influence from her son and daughter-in-law. She clicked her pen. We have recordings, written communication, and witness testimony. The judge raised an eyebrow. Witness testimony? And then, before I could look back, before I could blink, Dan stood up. Your Honor, he said, voice cracking, I'd like to speak. Bree's head snapped toward him. Dan. But he was already moving toward the front. He looked like a man dragging a confession behind him. Each step heavier than the last. I didn't want to believe it, he said. I thought Mom was just old. Tired. Stubborn. Bree told me it was for her safety. That she needed help. He paused. But it wasn't help. It was control. And I let it happen. I let the woman who raised me, who gave me everything, feel like a stranger in her own home. My throat tightened. Trish put her hand on my knee. Dan continued, eyes wet. I saw the emails. I knew about the appraisal. I even signed the petition. I thought I was doing the right thing. But watching her fight back? Seeing the footage, reading the messages she kept, hearing the truth out loud? I can't unsee it. He looked right at me. I'm sorry, Mom. I failed you. Bree was frozen. Pale. Speechless for once. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Dan returned to his seat. Didn't look at Bree. Just kept his eyes on the floor. The rest was a blur. Trish submitted our folders of evidence. Bree fumbled through a rebuttal, but her voice cracked. Even the judge looked exhausted by her. Then it was my turn. I stood. I didn't have notes. Didn't need them. Your Honor, I said, I'm 72 years old. I paid off my mortgage, lost a husband I loved, and watched this country change more than I ever thought possible. I've cared for my neighbors, taught Sunday school, and sat up nights with a sick grandbaby. I paused. I'm not perfect. I forget things. I sometimes put the cereal in the fridge. But I remember who I am. I remember what love looks like. And I know the difference between care and control. Bree shifted uncomfortably. What they tried to do wasn't caretaking, I said. It was erasure. Polite, well-dressed erasure. I looked at the judge. I'm here because I matter. My voice matters. And I won't be silenced. Not while I can still stand, still speak, and still remember every single betrayal I lived through under my own roof. Silence. Even the clerk looked misty-eyed. The judge took a breath. He flipped through the file. Scanned the medical letter. The footage transcripts. Dan signed statement. Then he looked up. This court finds no cause to grant the guardianship petition. All motions are denied. I didn't cry. Not then. But the moment I stepped outside and felt the sun on my face again, not filtered through someone else's window, I wept. Lily grabbed my hand. You did it. No, I said, we did. But the story wasn't over. When we got back to the rental, Chloe's news segment was already airing. Prime time. She'd included a short clip from the hearing. Just enough. My voice echoed through the screen. Polite, well-dressed erasure. The story exploded. Within 24 hours, it had over 2 million views. Major outlets picked it up. A senator from Oregon even tweeted, "This is why elder rights need stronger protections." Emails came in by the hundreds. Offers to speak. To write. To collaborate on legislation. But the message I treasured most came from someone anonymous. Just 2 lines. "You reminded me my mother isn't invisible. Thank you for fighting." That night, Bree texted me. Just 1 sentence, "I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then typed back, "I'm free." And I was. Have you ever looked someone in the eye, someone you once loved, and realized they don't see you anymore? Not the real you. Not the years. Not the sacrifices. Just a version of you they invented to justify what they've done. That was Bree, standing across from me at the community forum, holding a microphone like it was a sword. Her face was calm, rehearsed. She wore that same pale blue blouse she always chose when she wanted to appear soft. But I knew the truth. This wasn't about softness. It was about control. 2 weeks had passed since the court denied her guardianship petition. 2 weeks since Dan broke ranks and admitted the truth. 2 weeks since my story had aired across the country, gone viral, and ignited a conversation far bigger than any of us expected. And now, here we were, on a stage, in a church gymnasium repurposed as a town hall, because the mayor wanted to hold a forum on elder rights and community care. Chloe Ramirez was moderating. Bree had insisted she be part of the panel. To share the perspective of concerned family members, she'd said. What she really meant was, damage control. I hadn't planned to speak. But when Bree leaned into the mic and said, "Sometimes, protecting our loved ones means making hard choices they don't understand at the time," something inside me snapped. I stood up. My cane echoed as I crossed the stage. Every eye followed me. My knees trembled, but my voice didn't. With all due respect, I said, there's a difference between hard choices and selfish ones. There's a difference between protection and possession. Bree's smile tightened. I turned to the audience, neighbors, seniors, students, caregivers, and cameras. Let me ask you something, I said. When did we decide that getting older meant getting erased? A hush fell over the room. When did we start believing that the moment our hair grays or our memory lapses, we stop mattering? I'm not your burden. I'm your blueprint. I'm your mirror. If you're lucky, you'll be me someday. The applause was soft at first. Then it swelled. Even Chloe looked shaken. That night, I sat in my tiny rental kitchen, sipping chamomile tea with Lily, still buzzing from the event. Did you see Bree's face? She asked, grinning. I didn't need to, I said. I saw the audience. The truth had landed. Not just for me, but for thousands. What none of us expected was the aftermath. Chloe's network greenlit a full series on elder justice. A small nonprofit offered me a position as an advisor. My inbox flooded with invitations to speak, consult, even consult on a TV drama being developed. But the biggest shift was quieter. More personal. Dan started coming by once a week. Not to apologize again, he'd done that. But to sit. To talk. To reconnect. He brought pizza one Thursday, and we sat on folding chairs like teenagers in an empty dorm. I think I forgot what it felt like to be your son, he said, wiping sauce from his chin. You didn't forget, I said softly. You just stopped listening to the part of you that remembered. He nodded. Said nothing for a long time. Later that week, I got a certified letter in the mail. Bree had filed for divorce. No letter. No explanation. Just papers. I won't pretend I wasn't shocked. Or relieved. Or both. Bree had built her life around control, but when her narrative unraveled, she didn't fight. She vanished. Maybe the mask got too heavy. Maybe she couldn't survive being seen. Whatever the reason, I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. Finally. But the hardest moment came not from Bree. It came from Lily. One evening, as we were washing dishes, she said, "I'm thinking of moving out." I dropped the sponge. "Not far," she added quickly. "Just space. Independence." You know. I wanted to say no. I wanted to hold on tight. But I remembered what it felt like to be held too tightly. To be doubted. To be managed. So I dried my hands, turned to her, and said, "I'm proud of you." Her eyes welled up. "You really mean that?" "I do. You stayed when it was hardest. You earned your freedom, just like I earned mine." The next week, she moved into a shared apartment with 2 other young women. I helped her unpack. Hung a photo of her late mom, my daughter, on her wall. When I left, I hugged her tight. "I'll always be your home," I whispered. "No matter where you go." And then I drove away. Back to my place. My peace. And you know what? It was enough. The garden started blooming again. Roses and azaleas I'd thought long dead poked through the soil. Maybe they just needed air. Or maybe they needed a woman who believed in her own rebirth. One afternoon, as I trimmed back a wild rose bush, a young neighbor walked by with her toddler. She smiled. "You're Maggie, right?" she said. "From the story?" I nodded. "Thank you," she said. "My mom saw your video. She finally stood up to my uncle. Moved back into her own house last week." Tears stung my eyes. "That's wonderful," I whispered. "You gave her courage," she said. "You gave us courage." They kept walking, the toddler wobbling on chubby legs. I stood there, pruning shears in hand, heart fuller than it had been in years. That night, I lit a candle. Sat on my porch. Listened to the wind. And I asked myself, what would I have done if I'd stayed silent? If I'd let their lies define me? If I'd mistaken love for obedience? Would I still be here? Whole? Seen? The truth is, I don't think I was the one who needed saving. They did. From their fear. From their greed. From the belief that age equals weakness. But I'm not weak. I am steel wrapped in lace. I am the story they never expected to be told. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? What would you risk to be seen again? If this story touched something in you, share it. Or share your own. Because the more we speak, the more we rise. And trust me, they can't silence all of us.